A Fall River resident continues to try to find the pieces of the puzzle into why his brother died some 4 years ago. That's the topic of this week's version of Off the Record.
Hi, welcome to Off the Record. I'm Jo Good. I'm here with Dave Souza and Alan Zarek, and I'd like to introduce our guest today, Eric Mack. He is a Fall River resident, an attorney, and for the last 4 years, he and his family have been trying to find out the truth about what happened in November 2021 to their brother. He was shot by the Fall River police, and he has been, through the courts, been trying to get as much information as he can. And there's been a lot of thwarting along the way. Eric,
correct.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
Yes.
So it's been a long journey for you and your family. November 2021 was, I'm sure, a night none of you will forget.
Yes, that is correct.
Could you tell us a little bit what happened that night?
Yeah, so it must have been around 6:30, 7-ish, give or take. The Celtics had just started actually playing the Toronto Raptors. And I started watching the game. My sister calls me frenetic that something happened to my brother, and she's at the police station, and they won't tell her, right? So I go down to the police station, maybe 7:30, and at that time, it's me, my brother, and my sister in the waiting room of the police station. And
maybe if we could just back up a little.
Yes.
The reason why the police officers were called, there was a domestic complaint, correct?
There was a actually, there was not a domestic complaint. The reality of it is she called to tell them that he broke her phone. And if you listen to the actual recording of the call, the receptionist or whatever at the police department, dispatcher, thank you for the term. The dispatcher tells the woman that if you're calling about the broken phone, you really need to be calling like this is a small claims issue. You should, this isn't something we deal with, right? And she's actually on the phone eating, and it's just not a very serious conversation at that point in time. But they send cops out anyways, right? So they send cops out to her house, and at that point, they say they got into a fight 2 days prior. So, and that was what became the domestic. So the call really wasn't a domestic incident. It was about a phone that was broken, and then it turned into that subsequently. That's what got them called to the house. So then they're called to the house, I think at 5:45, give or take. And at that point, I find out, so I go down there with my brother and sister. We're there for like 2 hours, and they don't tell us what's going on.
You're at the police station
We're at the police station.
Not knowing
the
condition that your brother is in.
Yes, not knowing anything. The only thing that was sort of a tip was that the person who is like the receptionist at the desk there, like when you first walk in, said there was a shooting in Fall River tonight. But they weren't clear about what type of shooting and what it was. So there was sort of a discussion that we had overheard about that, but they didn't tell us. And we asked them for hours about what was going on, and they didn't tell us. So then they bring us in the room, then they proceed to question us about whether he had any weapons, anything that could be used as a weapon, and they go on and on that for 15 minutes about trying to get background. And I would say a way that I didn't necessarily appreciate, trying to see if there's anything that could be used in the house as a weapon. And then finally they tell us that he's died. So at the end of the interview, all right, simultaneously they interviewing my other brother who was there. And
he's Anthony's twin brother.
Yep. And then
he was his roommate in there the night of the shooting.
Yep. And then the next room they're interviewing the girlfriend, who they've told nobody what has happened to at this point in time. So that's sort of how this started, I guess.
Okay.
All right.
So your brother has passed away. There was a DA's investigation along with the Massachusetts State Police, correct?
Well, I'm going to pause for that.
Sure.
Because this story about the Mass State Police doing the investigation and the Fall River Police being out of it is completely untrue.
Okay.
In my interview,
they were involved?
In my interview, there was a Fall River Police officer who asked almost all the questions.
Okay.
All right. So in every interview of a non-police officer that I've seen, it's been the Fall River Police that are the ones asking the questions. So this concept of the Fall River Police not being involved is just completely not true. And I want to say something about the district attorney's investigation. He concluded his investigation within about approximately a month. He concluded it before he had any labs back, before he had any fingerprints, before he had any ballistics. He concluded it before he had.
And I was working at the Herald News at the time, and if I recall, I think I'm right, there was a press release a day or two after. Do you remember that, Alan? A day or two after, pretty much clearing and there were two Fall River police officers.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you mean the press conference that took place that night?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm wrong.
Yes.
It was a press conference that night.
You read that press conference that way. I did not read it as clearing them. Maybe I should have. Maybe that's me being naive. So that night he says in an interview there was a knife present, right? Which I thought was a very weird way to characterize there being a knife. Like, you know what I mean? He didn't say he was trying to stab him. He didn't say he was this, but he just said there was a knife present, right? Which is
maybe just to clarify for people who are watching.
Yeah.
Two police officers, a male and a female, young officers.
Less than 2 years.
Less than 2 years.
Yeah.
The story that we heard was that they responded to this call. Anthony was awaiting a trial, correct?
That is correct.
For misdemeanor?
Yes.
Yeah, misdemeanor.
So it was now they've sort of morphed over time, right? At the time, this was a district court case, and I don't know if you know anything about the sentencing levels and levels of severity. That's the lowest, a district court case. Now they're trying to paint him as a monster, all these things. And I was like, he was at a district court case, which is not that really serious of an offense.
Right.
But, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so what we were told was that they responded. I think from the time that from my understanding, they entered the apartment, they asked him to go into his room, his bedroom, is that?
That's incorrect.
That's incorrect, okay.
So the landlord actually responds to the door from upstairs, comes downstairs.
And he allows them in.
And he invites them in, and then that's when they walk into Anthony's bedroom. And that's where this takes place.
Okay.
So that's sort of the sequence of events from that. And, there's a dispute about whether or not they were properly in the house, given that the landlord allowed them into the house.
Sure.
So go ahead.
And within about a minute and a half, allegedly, your brother pulled a steak knife and attempted to stab the young male officer, and the young female officer shot him more than once, correct?
So, I prefer to use names.
But no, that's fine.
So Michael Sullivan is the male officer.
Sullivan, yeah.
Chelsea Campoloni is the female officer. That's pretty much the story that they have told, and I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of where this knife was located.
Yes.
The knife was found behind his television on a desk, right? And supposedly it was picked up and then put behind my brother's television, right? So as you can imagine, I don't particularly believe that any person would pick up a knife and put it behind the television. That's just not.
You mean the investigating police officer?
Yes, I do not believe a police officer picked up, and in addition to that, the discovery of that story is Michael Pavo, who was an officer who responded, drives Michael Sullivan to the hospital. And at some point later in the night, he says the knife behind the TV, I put it there.
He went back. No, he didn't go back.
He's calling around to tell people he did that.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he didn't tell anybody that.
On the scene?
On the scene, right? And I haven't been able to pin down a firm timeline because nobody saved the phone logs to tell me like how many hours after that this story is then created. So that's the story that they're saying is later on they found it.
Where was that TV, in the bedroom or the living room?
In his bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah. This bedroom, probably if this is a desk, the TV is here, facing Alan, and the knife is behind the television.
And there's pictures of it.
There's pictures of it. Yeah.
They took pictures of where they found the knife.
Yeah. They took pictures of where they found it. They never took a picture of where they claim it was located. So there's nothing beyond that guy saying that that
Just saying he picked it up and put it there,
Yeah.
but he didn't say where he picked it up from.
No, and to give you a little bit of context to that guy, who's no longer a police officer, by the way, because he was arrested.
Yeah.
His name is Michael Pavo, and he was arrested for his own domestic situation, and then
He left.
he left before he could get fired, because as soon as the arrest came down, he knew he was going to get arrested, so he resigned, and he didn't tell the truth about what took place, and he was going to be investigated for it.
Wasn't he still under investigation?
He may still be in, so I do not know the answer to that question. I knew he was gotten arrested, and I know that they were going to investigate him, and they reported him to the police officer standards training committee, the post. Basically, whenever to decertify you as a police officer, you get reported there. So my understanding is he was reported to that.
So it's a very long and convoluted story. There's
Yes.
been a lot of ups and downs for you all.
Yeah.
So and your family was trying to get answers. And could you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, people see where we are, but people don't realize the stuff that's happened that we tried to be. You know, I said, if this is what you say it is, show me everything. And if it comes out to be what you say it is, it's an unfortunate thing. What happened? So we sent them a letter asking to give us the stuff. They said no, right?
And is this after it was
This is after they closed
officially
after they closed the
completed?
investigation. They said they're still investigating. I was like, you can't have it both ways. You close the investigation, it's closed. You got to give it to me. And they were just like, we're not going to give it to you, right? So at that point, we sued them. And, you know, we went to...
You sued the
District Attorney, yeah, Thomas Quinn. Yeah, and, you know, we went in so far as to send them a letter being like, here's why you have to give it to us. Here's the cases, here's the information. Like, no, you're wrong, right? And so we went at this, they filed a motion to dismiss. We get to the hearing, and
this was a public records lawsuit.
Yeah. So we get to the hearing. I've been doing this 18 years. We get to the hearing. They say, you know what, never mind. We're going to give him some stuff, right? At the hearing, so they withdraw their motion. Then we file, then they were like, but we're not going to give them all this other stuff. And then we...
What were they giving you originally?
So this is how they could spin the narrative, right? They gave me anything they gave me anything that my brother had gotten arrested for before, anything my brother got in trouble for, anything to paint him bad, but they won't give me anything about the actual shooting, right? So now the media has all bad stuff, but they don't have anything about the shooting. But, you know, this is about my criticism of the media. I'm about to go in. They're unable to discern complicated things. You know, somebody holds something shiny in front of them, they report on it. Whether it's true or not, they just report on it. So, and they basically fell for the trap that the DA, you know, set for them, right? So now they give all...
Not all reporters, I just want to be clear.
Not all reporters, yeah. So, but they don't give me anything about the shooting. But, you know, the public can't say like, oh, he got that, he didn't, you know what I mean? They're not looking at they just look at what's there. They don't look what's not there, I guess, so to speak. So now it's like, all right, what's not there, right? So, and then that was the second step of the fight, is they didn't give me the interviews. They didn't give me the interviews of the police officers. They didn't give me the interviews of the civilians. They didn't give me the crime scene reconstruction. They didn't give me the sketch of where the evidence was. They didn't give me anything that I could probably use to see what happened, right? And so that's then where the fight was about the rest of the stuff, which we subsequently won at the Superior Court and then won at the Supreme Court as well.
And then one thing to clarify, too, the police department at the time did not have body cams.
They did not have body cams, but there was surveillance video of the neighbors.
What might have been different about this case if each officer had been wearing a body cam?
I would not be sitting here right now, and I think there would be police officers in prison. That's a very succinct way of starting, because this story...
Or your brother would still be alive.
I don't know about that. But I definitely don't, you know, I don't think the story that they would not have gone this far. We would have seen what happened. And now I have some surveillance video. I don't have all of it. By any means do I have all the surveillance video. So there's still pieces of this puzzle that I still don't have.
So you've been getting some info dribs and drabs, correct?
Yes, repeatedly.
Where were there cameras that captured this, and how many do you think?
So my brother's house was set back So let's picture a driveway and a house at the
And this
end of the
happened, to
driveway.
be clear, what street was he on?
I'm forgetting the name of the street right now, but I'll remember it as this goes on. But his house is at the end of a driveway, and then there's a house on the left of the driveway. So the house on the left of the driveway had Melville Street, by the way.
I remember.
The house had on the left of the driveway had 4 cameras, right? So I've gotten most of the video from those 4 cameras, but not all of it. And now my understanding is there's 2 other sets of cameras that I don't have the footage from, right? And
Does that footage even exist?
Well, they say it does. Now, here's one of the things that the public records lawsuit was able to get. I needed to know everything they had, right? They had to put down, here's everything we have. And in the everything
Did they actually do that?
I only know, well,
What you know, right? What they gave you?
I will say 2 things about that. Yes and no. They put down a lot of stuff, most of it. We then reviewed the documents separately and said, you've identified these things. We looked at all the records. These things are not in the index you provided us. Where are they, right? I never got an answer to this last question.
Okay.
Where are they?
Okay.
And what of the things that they didn't, the crime scene reconstruction, which I deem to be very important.
Sure, you don't have that.
They don't know where it is. The DA doesn't know where it is. In the sketch of the evidence, they claim they don't know where it is, right? Now, you have a question?
No, I'm just listening.
And within the index and within the documents, we were able to gather that there were 3 different surveillance videos recovered in 3 different apartments, right? I know where one was. I don't know where those other 2 are, right? So I don't know if it was the house to the right. I don't know if it was the house across the street. I don't know where it was located. So that's the one I have right now. It's just the house on the left-hand side. Yeah.
So to stay on the videos, one of the things that you were asking for were the videos, interviews
Yes. correct.
of the police officers involved, Campolone and Sullivan,
Yep.
and the EMTs that,
Yeah.
and you have those.
I have the interviews of all the police officers and the paramedics, all the public employees. And they were very enlightening in some ways. The reports show you some things, but the reports don't show you everything. And I'll give you an example. One of the police officers, Rory McComb, his report was unclear about what he saw and when. He said he never saw a knife, and then he says he saw one. And then, it just
Is this a police officer? Or
Rory
is this,
McComb, I'm sorry, he's a police
okay,
officer.
Yep. I think you did say that.
Yeah, and then when you get the interviews, what you see is he says he never saw one. You see the camera go off, and then you see 15 minutes later it comes back on, and then he says, we had a conversation in the hallway. There's something else you want to share with us. And he says, oh yeah, by the way, I did see one, and behind the TV, right? So you always look at something like that, and you're like, all right, you said no. The camera goes off 15 minutes later. They brought you back in, and now you say yes.
I saw the interviews with the 2 EMTs. Both of them said they didn't see anything
The EMTs,
because they were there pretty
they
quick.
were there immediately. If there's anybody that's on it, it's them.
What I thought was kind of weird, though, is they kept them out of the room for a couple of minutes before they let them in.
So
You mean at the scene?
the
At the
EMTs,
scene, yeah. The guy's
Yeah.
been wounded, and they had to wait. I thought that was kind of unusual.
they made them wait. So the EMTs were interviewed, and I believe the EMTs were interviewed by the police, by the
Yeah.
Fall River Police, to be
Yep.
specific, right? So this idea that the Fall River Police were not involved in the investigation is simply not true. But the EMTs don't know the story the police are going to tell, right? The EMTs are going to come in and say what happened, right? And they said what happened. And they said none of what the police said is true, essentially, right? And so you can look at those, and that's what really happened there in that situation. And then, the police, this whole they're not kept apart. They speak to each other. The DA's report said they were separated, and so they wouldn't talk about the story. That's just not true. I mean, you see in the video, they're standing there talking to each other.
Are you talking about the EMTs, or are you talking about
The police, Campoloni and Sullivan.
Campoloni and Sullivan.
Yeah, they were like,
They were not separated.
they were not separated.
Isn't that interviewing 101 for police? They separate.
Well, the DA's report says that they were separated to keep them apart from getting the
But
story.
the video.
The video shows it wasn't. The police officers said they weren't. And then when you said they went to the St. Anne's together, and they were in the rooms with only a curtain between them where they could just talk, and there was all kind of other officers there as well. So this idea that they were separated so they couldn't get the stories, like, that's just not true. But you know.
And one of the videos that you did get that is pretty fascinating to me is the interview with Officer Sullivan by the state police. And what did he say?
He said he never saw a knife. The guy that.
And you have that just to AnthonyHarden.com.
Yes.
And you can see that interview on your website.
You can look at it for yourself. You can see the paramedics interviews for yourself. I put those interviews up there so people can look at them themselves and make their decisions. But yeah, Michael Sullivan, the individual that they claim was trying to be stabbed, says he never saw a knife, right? So, you know, you look at the story and you start to think about it, and it's just, yeah, they're just trying to keep her from going to prison. I mean,
Things are, they're not adding up.
They're just not true. Yeah. Right. And even the truth that's been told by everybody is inconsistent with what they're saying. And the DA omitted all of those facts from his report.
Chelsea was the only one that did any shooting in that room?
I am not convinced of that.
Because in her interview, she said she shot twice. When we were watching the EMT's interview, he said he'd been shot twice on the left side, once in the stomach, and once on the right side.
I am not convinced of that. There's still a big hole in that story there that I haven't got to the bottom of yet.
Meaning she said she shot twice,
Meaning I'm not convinced that Michael Sullivan didn't fire his gun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because he had 3 wounds.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced.
There's 2 on the left, 1 in the center, 1 on the right.
I'm not convinced Michael Sullivan didn't fire his gun.
Okay.
Now,
Right.
you know, there is evidence that is missing that I need to see to see, you know. I mean, the crime scene reconstruction is the obvious thing, but there's other things out there that I still want to take a closer look at to see things. Okay. Yeah.
So there's 3 lawsuits that your family has filed.
Yeah.
The second one, and so I'll preface what I'm asking you with what I know is that Officer Sullivan was a close friend of District Attorney Quinn's son.
Yeah.
Not only a childhood friend, but they were roommates in college.
Yes,
and
that's correct.
I know that because I asked the question, and I didn't get an answer. I eventually did. The DA did confirm that, this Officer Sullivan was friends, but basically that there was no conflict of interest there. So you you did file a lawsuit to have the DA removed.
Yeah, so that was a long fight too, and
in an unusual fight.
So, and quite frankly, it's one that's never been done before. Quite frankly,
So
if that's unusual. So, typically, well, there's a couple of layers to that. The first layer to that is the Attorney General is typically the one that files these lawsuits to remove a district attorney, right? That's just how it's always been done. That's not to say that's the only way to do it. And then I believe.
So the law allowed you to file.
Well, there was a difference of opinion about that. There was a case, I believe in 1967, I might get my years wrong, where the Massachusetts Bar Association filed a lawsuit to remove a clerk. So to back up a step, the statute that allows you to remove a district attorney has other offices that can be removed, one of which is a clerk. And so the Massachusetts Bar Association filed a lawsuit to remove the clerk. The clerk said only the Attorney General can do that. And then the Supreme Court of Massachusetts said that's not correct. There's nothing in the statute that requires the Attorney General to do it, right? And then they went ahead with the decision about the clerk and things like that. So, but there was never an individual to do it, right? So then I filed one being like, look, I can do that too, right? And there's been a big issue about it, right? I mean, and one of them is, do you want? I'm back. The government claims that it wants people to have rights. They only want people to have so many rights. They don't want you to do certain things, right? And this is not something they want to do or have to deal with. But I also believe I had the right to do it, right? So, which I did. And so just last week, I believe, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but they dismissed it. Basically, they said everything that I said was correct, right? Nothing I said was inaccurate in my briefing. Nothing I said about the relationship. Nothing I said was incorrect, but they don't know if it rises to the level of illegality, right? And we can agree to disagree about the conclusion they've reached on that. But that is the conclusion that they've reached, and I would say that's a to be continued story, because their conclusion was based on what I have right now. There might be more to come later.
And I just want to add that you told me that if I had wanted to go look for this, I couldn't get any records.
It's a private decision. It's not for the public to see, and all of the names of the individuals in there have been, not most of them, the officers in particular, have been used pseudonyms, so you couldn't even, if you could find it, which you can't, then you couldn't even tell who was who in that decision. Yeah.
Okay, so, and just this October, you filed a lawsuit against the city.
Yes.
For the shooting and your brother's death.
Yes.
It's still a pending lawsuit, and I understand that.
I am not to speak about that at this point in time.
Sure.
But, yeah.
But a lot of the information that came out in the public records lawsuit pretty much shows what
everything I just said is in the complaint.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Everything I said is in the complaint, and it's probably more in the complaint.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was interesting to me. In October, when you filed it, the Fall River Police Department on their Facebook page had a very long response to a filing. And I don't know, Alan, how many times have you been told when you ask people about a pending lawsuit in government that they don't talk about pending lawsuits?
Yeah. Well, I remember that is several paragraphs long, and that's one of the things that makes it unusual is how detailed they went into that particular posting.
Named you, but not the police officers.
Yeah.
Well, they named me as sort of, they tried to portray me as the attorney of record on that case, which I'm not. They never referred to me as Anthony's brother in the whole posting, right? They tried to characterize me as an attorney who was out to get money for something, right? None of which is even true. But that's the way. And I said, they don't think they like me very much these days. They're not friendly with me. But that is what it is. I can tell you what's going to happen next. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. They're going to do what they're going to do. And they're not going to tell me what to do, right? So that's what's going to happen next.
I did look, and it's a real active, it's a very active lawsuit right now. I believe there are like 42 filings.
Yeah, there are about 50.
October.
Yeah, 50 filings. So it's a heavily litigated case, but it's moving very, very quickly.
Are you still in just the filing motions? Do you have a court date, or is this? I know if nothing happens quickly,
yeah, this has happened way quicker than I thought it would happen, but it's not happening quick enough that there's anything that I would characterize.
Remind me, is it federal court that it's filed?
Federal court in Boston.
I thought so.
There's nothing that I believe in terms of a very sort of important issue that's come up. We're still sort of in the attorneys exchanging information type phase.
How has your family been able to just stay above the fray? I was with your family for in the beginning. You had rallies, you had protests. It was also Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
At that time. But it was peaceful protests, and I didn't, I felt like your family was sitting there waiting for the answers.
So I think I'm going to answer your question, but I may not answer your question. So, the lawsuit was filed in October-ish, give or take. The holidays followed that. So, I did. I spent time with my family during the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I just was with my son in Disney last week. We just got back. So, sometimes you have to take time outs for the rest of your life, right?
Absolutely.
And your other job, there's people have other obligations or things. And so there are pockets of busyness, and I think that we're about to enter another active pocket of busyness. There's an election coming for a district attorney, right?
There is.
There is, right? So that will be part of the next phase here. The lawsuit's active as well, and we'll see what else sort of we can do to make sure things move forward. So it's an ongoing, it's a marathon really, and we're about, if you had to ask me, I think we just crossed half field in the football.
Really? You only
Yeah.
think you're halfway there?
I think we're halfway there right now, maybe the 45-yard line. But we have some momentum and we're on offense right now.
That's a lot for a family to take, but you've been pretty dogged, I would say.
Yeah, it's something you work on every day. So even despite it take time off or whatever, it's an everyday activity that there's something that needs to be done in some way or fashion. So, and that can be mentally fatiguing and exhausting over a tremendous.
What else are you working on besides this? You're a practicing attorney, so.
I have a job.
Right.
We forgot to mention.
I have a job, I have a son, I have a wife, I have a family. I travel a fair amount for work and things like that. So, I work almost 7 days a week to stay busy and try to spend time with my family, things like that. So.
So I believe you've practiced law for 18 years?
18 years, yeah.
What has this experience of somebody who probably knows law pretty well?
Yep.
Now you're on kind of the other side.
Correct.
What are your thoughts about the justice system and policing and?
Well, there's this. First of all, don't believe what people tell you.
Yeah.
Right. That's the step one. Just because somebody says something to you does not make it true. Right. So that's step one. There's this sort of facade that the government is telling you the truth. They have your best interest in mind and things like that. That's not true, right? It's just not. The district attorney didn't want to give me the information because it was not favorable to the police officers. He was willing to violate the law to do that. He had to pay me $85,000, which I paid to get the stuff, right?
Well, that's right. So he did have to pay legal fees,
He paid me,
and that was $85,000.
$85,000. The judge fined him $1,000 because he was blatantly violating the law, right?
The public records law.
Yeah, he's blatantly violating the law. But how many people can have $85,000 to be like, all right, I'm going to do this, right? Mm-hmm. Usually the government can just say, we're just going to treat you this way and there's nothing you can do about it.
And a lot of people can't afford it.
They can't afford to do it, right? So that's the travesty of this. And, attorneys want to help, but there aren't a lot of attorneys that can say, look, I'm going to foot the bill for this the entire way. So it's a situation where 9 out of 10 times they tell you a story, they then put up we're not going to give you any information, we're going to talk to you, and there's nothing people can do about it. So that's the most unfortunate thing that I've seen about this issue.
On the website, you're also looking for any more possible witnesses to any of this? What are you hoping for on that one? Consider it sort of like a closed situation where it was your brother and the PD in there and nobody else.
So I will say, I'm not going to answer your question directly, but there's something very, very, very particular that I'm looking for.
You know what you're looking for?
I know what I'm looking for. I know what I'm looking for. And I think I wouldn't be surprised. Somebody has it. Somebody has something, a piece of this puzzle that I need. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's not as open-ended. If somebody has something that I didn't expect, great.
Sure.
Great.
Go into any detail on what that piece is or not?
You just said he wasn't.
I'd prefer not to right now. Yeah. So it's I've looked at things and I've tried to figure things out. It's a big, massive puzzle, and you're missing pieces to the puzzle, right? So you're like, what piece of this puzzle am I missing? All right, I think I'm missing that one and this one. I know I'm missing this one because you say you won't give it to me. So it's trying to put all those pieces to the puzzle together.
We were talking about some other cases, and Alan and I were talking about discovery, and this is really at the crux of this is you want this discovery that they are supposed to provide.
That is correct.
And it's a and I've been in court a lot, and it seems to be a constant struggle for defense attorneys, or not in this case, a plaintiff.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the Fall River Herald News had the whole issue with and I don't remember what the individual's name was, but the DPUW or something like that individual, and they just wouldn't give it to you.
Oh, that was me.
They
That was my lawsuit.
Yeah, they just wouldn't give
And
it
they
to
give us $50,000.
you. Yeah,
So.
but not to, like, you won that, they gave you the stuff, and we've never heard about it ever again, right? So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that when I got the stuff, I was going to show what I got, because the news cycles are so short, right? There's a video of the officer who says, they say he tried to stab, saying there was no knife, and not one reporter covered it, right? Nobody's gonna recover it. I had to air a commercial to show.
Right, yeah, you had to create a commercial.
I had to do it myself, right? Which is like, I guess it's fine, but like you're sort of depending on the media to tell you the truth, and nobody has covered that aspect of the story till this day. So, I think I'm sort of on a tangent. What was the question you asked first?
Regarding, you were talking about discovery.
Oh, discovery,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the crux of it, it's a discovery dispute about getting the information. And what people don't realize is that the government has the upper hand, because they created the evidence and they took the evidence, and you don't know what they have, right? So, I never did practice criminal law. And then, I started talking to some criminal defense attorneys, and they're basically like, we only have what the government decides to give us, right?
Yeah.
And, maybe they don't give you everything, right? And you don't have a right to ask. In civil, you have broader discovery. You can actually ask for specific things. And criminal, the district attorneys just turn over what they believe is relevant, right?
Even if they have other evidence.
Oh, that happens every day. Every day.
Even
in
if they
court.
have, and then you're supposed to be like, well, I don't think, first of all, you have to have somebody that's going to fight to get the rest of it, right? You just seen it with me, right? They gave me something, but like, they didn't give me everything. Some attorneys would be like, all right, that's good enough, right?
See,
And
I
there's
always thought
also
they were
the-
required.
Huh?
I always thought any knowledge they have, they're required to pass it on to the other attorney.
What they believe is relevant.
They are required, but
Yeah.
I used
Yeah.
to see it every day in court.
They have a way to skate around it.
Well, there's always a constant battle.
Yeah, I don't
And
think.
there's evidence that's never collected in some cases.
Well, I'll give you an example. So my brother's investigation, when you're investigating somebody, the target of your investigation is the person you interview last, right? That's always how it's done. They interview these officers first, right? So the evidence never collected. They don't even know what to ask them, because they don't know what everybody else said. They don't have the crime scene reconstruction. They don't have the sketch. They don't have anything else. They're just basically like, and if you watch the interviews, they're asking them leading questions, being like, you were scared for your life. There was nothing you could do, right? All you got to do as the police officer is just say yes, 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 yes. That's it, right? Like, so that's, evidence is never collected. We don't know they never asked Chelsea Campbelloni where she was standing when she fired the shots. Like, where were you in the room when this happened, right? That's a very simple question, and basically, but they never even bother asking it. So it's things like that. The whole investigation process is just a sham, right? It's just, we need to get something on paper for a reason to say you did what you did. And we'll help you, by the way, because we'll give you the answers to the test. We'll ask you leading questions. And then when we ask a question that we don't like the answer, we get the answer, we'll try to give you an out by being like, well, maybe you couldn't see, maybe that, they're trying to help them along the way. So that's sort of how those interviews and investigations took place.
So over 4 years,
Yep.
you have been fighting, and I just wanted to, and you are looking for anybody who might have some information.
Yeah.
And maybe you could, the website again is?
It's AnthonyHarden.com, and it's a $10,000 reward for information. Go to the website. There's a email address that's still active. And people can find me. I'm not that hard to find. People have found me.
Always call back.
And I always call back. So we're still sort of actively sort of advancing the ball. But we made a lot of progress, I think, in the last couple of months. So I've been impressed with the pace of the actual wrongful death lawsuit.
Well, please keep us, up to date on how the case is going. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And it's a sad story, but it's very fascinating. And I know that your family has worked really hard. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right.